keep forgetting to do this. Dang. I don't want y'all to be like, hey, yo, I don't want to be in part of all these like live stream John. So let me make sure that I do y'all that solid real quick. Whoops. A lot of things happening, a lot of things happening. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I gotta take those little gotta take the little videos out just a little bit. Okay, what's good, everybody? It's your boy Cam. We are here live on YouTube. And today we're gonna be building a pretty cringe website, just like there's no better websites than the cringe ones because the cringe ones will teach you a lot about HTML. But yeah, we're just gonna do some live coding, hack on this website to learn a little bit about HTML, talk about some elements that could be helpful, and just kind of get our bearings within the landscape of working and writing HTML. So if y'all are ready to rock with me, just give me a thumbs up so I know y'all are here. You know what I mean? And I'll take it from there, and we'll get it rocking and rolling. All 52 of y'all. Yeah, there it is. Hey, there it is. There it is. There's the thumbs. It's a. All right, cool. So here's how we're gonna actually get started doing this. So I'll show you the little cringe website, and then we'll reverse engineer it ourselves and just kind of build pieces of it ourselves. And then some of it we'll get through all the way, but other parts of it will we will maybe work on a little bit later. So let me just share my screen with y'all wonderful people, and I will show you this little cringe website that we're going to make together. So, all right, here it is. You see this wonderfully cringe looking website of me and well, this is essentially like what we're gonna be able to build today. So this is a little simple HTML site, right? It's got nice little title, nice picture of myself or something, and two links. And those are the most important part, right? These links are go to some other HTML pages. As you can see, another cringe photo of your boy. This is like I built this actually a long time ago. This is actually one of my first websites I ever made, and this one was a resume site kind of that I had to design when I took a web dev class. I'm not gonna make y'all make a whole resume site yourself, but the goal is to have like a nice little multi-page site like this that just like, gives you a little bit of primer to like the basics of HTML. So we're not going to be building a complete replica, and I would hate it if y'all built 50 versions of a site about me. That would be very cringe. But we are going to be building some simple HTML out to kind of accomplish a similar feel for y'all. So here's how we're going to do it. Right? I like to give you the plan, and then we'll go into the plan and then put the plan to action. So in order to do this, we're going to need to first like understand how to set up a new project and create a new project within HTML. And then two, we're going to need to learn some HTML to be able to do this. And then three, and this is where we're going to see if we can sauce up our HTML based on the time we have toward the end. And depending on that, I might introduce a new topic that we're going to talk about a lot more next week, which is CSS. And so that's really the plan. How we'll get through those things, we're going to need a text editor. So long as you have like VS Code or something on your machine, or a digital online text editor that you want to use for now, so long as you have a browser so you can see the changes, you should be good. I'm going to be using VS Code. I know the majority of us got VS Code downloaded last time we linked up. And I will be using Brave just because that's my browser of choice. But so long as you got Google Chrome, Firefox, Brave, whatever works for you, Safari even could be good. Something that has developer tools so that we can check those out frequently. So if again, y'all ready to go, we're going to be doing this a lot. Just give me a thumbs up so I can make sure that we're all in the same place and ready to rock, and we'll get it popping. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. And as I'm going, I will try my best to definitely answer questions, but it will be helpful to me. Drop them in the chat because you don't know there's 50 of us here. So one of your peers might be able to help if you drop your thing in the chat. And it's also good for me to see those questions in the chat because I like to save them later and then give y'all resources or additional things that could be helpful in that regard. So if you have questions, definitely please try to drop them in the chat first. And then otherwise I'll look and maybe ask clarifying questions or pause and let folks ask questions as we go. But yeah, so first things first, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna open up VS Code and we're going to take it from there. So this is the site. I'm gonna just share my whole desktop a bit because I'm gonna be bouncing back and forth between this for a little bit till we get our bearings. But first thing I'm gonna do is open up VS Code. And so if y'all are following along with me, go ahead and open up VS Code. You should kind of get thrown into the um, main project view like this. And this is always going to be like what you see when you start a new project, right? There's a couple of different ways that you can open a new project in VS Code. Um, for now, we'll talk about like kind of a more simple way, but over time, as we continue to do some live coding together, we'll probably sauce that little workflow up a lot more for ourselves too. Um, excuse me. So here's what I want y'all to do, and I'm gonna do it myself. I want to create a new folder for this project. This I told y'all before. I'm very fanatical about keeping my projects in folders because it's just gonna make my life easier. So looks like there's a couple places that will help me do this. There's one big blue button here on my screen that says open folder. I can also get to this by clicking this little open icon with the folder here, or at the top, file and an open folder. And when you click any of those things, what's gonna happen is your browser or your computer, excuse me, is gonna pop up with your file explorer, right? Give me a thumbs up if y'all can see that on your side, right? Some bunch of all your files on your computer, local computer, exactly. So if you have not yet already done so, choose a folder that is going to be like your main folder for holding all of the projects you work on in your class or in this class or working with me in web dev or whatnot, right? So like for me, I like to keep a project in my main folder, my main home folder directory that I call CS projects or I call comp or something that I know is like, hey, I'm going to save a bunch of projects in this folder. If you don't want to create a new folder, you can always, choose your desktop or somewhere else on your machine. But once you've chosen that particular place, here's what I want you to do. I want you to actually create a new folder in that folder that's going to represent where we're going to work, what we're going to work on today. So choose a place where you'll know where this folder that we're creating is essentially, right? So for me, let's say I say, oh, I'm going to put this on my desktop. So here I'm going to click my desktop and click new folder. And then in there is where I'm going to rename this new folder to be something like, you know, um, personal website. Is kind of what I'm going to name this particular folder. And once you have that folder that you just created called personal website or something like that, that's what you want to open in VS Code. So couple little steps, right? Make sure you have a place where you'll know where that folder is so it's easy to find it in case you are looking for it later. But make a new folder called personal website, personal site, my website, whatever you want to call it right now. And then open that folder in VS Code. And when you do that, VS Code should reload kind of like mine did with that folder as the name of the at the top of the VS Code Explorer. If you see this and it's the same name as whatever you named your folder, you're good. So that's the most important first step. You're gonna see a lot of pop-ups like this on VS Code because they're kind of trying to make sure that the code you're opening is secure in your mind. And so because this is a project I'm working on, I can say, yeah, I trust myself. So here you can actually see the path that I chose. I ended up putting this folder on my desktop just for now so that it was easy for me to describe it to y'all. This path might look different for you based on where you chose to save it, but so long as the name of the folder matches what you wanted, you can go ahead and trust, and you should be sitting here on the main VS Code screen ready to go. And if you are, just raise your hand so I know that you are. And if you are, that way I can see and keep track of how many folks are ready to go. And yeah, we'll take it from there. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, like I said, and we'll get it popping. All right, cool. I'm seeing a lot of hands. So all we had to do is just open a new folder in VS Code. I called it personal website, but you can call it really whatever you want, so long as you know, hey, this is where I'm going to be working on that particular this new particular project. And again, when you start making new projects later, you won't have to keep creating a whole, you won't have to recreate a new folder per se, but like I told y'all, I think it's really helpful to save your projects in folders. And once we start implementing Git and GitHub and all of those things into these projects, you'll really understand why, right? You'll see like, oh, like this makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah. Please keep your hands up though, just because it's gonna help me keep track of how many folks are ready to go. And again, if you're stuck and you haven't made it here, just put a message in the chat or something. That would be helpful. Um, if you need more time, I just use this to kind of gauge we're all in the same place. And so long as I see at least more than half of us, then I think we're good to keep going. Because again, this is being recorded, and you should be able to you'll be able to look back at this. All right. I think that is that is good. Cool. Awesome. Cool. So bet. Thank y'all so much. So we just really just opened up the project. Not we didn't do anything too crazy. But now we can kind of get into the swing of things. So I just lower y'all's hands. Appreciate y'all. We'll do that periodically just so I can kind of gauge and make sure that we're all on the same page. Sorry, move that out my background. And then yeah, keep it pushing. So first things first, right? Now that we're created a new folder, we're actually in a great place to start this project. And what we're working on is an HTML website, right? So just to pull back up kind of the website that the first page of this website that we're going to build, right? I want to create a nice little page that is going to allow for me to have a nice heading and some image, and then later a couple of links, right? So what we're taking a look at here is HTML, right? And HTML is the structure of web pages, right? There's three key ingredients to a saucy web page, right? And a saucy web page is always going to have some HTML, and the HTML is like the structure of that web page. It will contain all the elements that we would expect to see. Saucy websites have some CSS, right, which allow for us to style those elements that we created with HTML. And the most saucy websites have some interactability and dynamic things going on in them, and that's where we use JavaScript. We're not going to get that far today. We're really just going to look at the HTML for the most part and a little bit of CSS. But the it's important to remember that a website includes those three things: the structure with HTML, the style with CSS, and the interactability and dynamic programming aspects that come from JavaScript. The action-oriented nature of how we typically use websites comes from us using JavaScript. So we're going to be building a simple version of this. And so we need to create some HTML for ourselves. So the first thing I want to do, right, is inside of this new project folder that I started, and I'm sorry, I'll just get rid of this big banner from Zoom. Inside of this new project folder I started, right, I want to create a new file to help me start my HTML. And in VS Code, there's a couple of different ways to do this. As you can see inside, I can close this little welcome window and drag this open a little bit more. So you can see in VS Code, there's a couple of different icons here on the left, and I'll just take a quick second to go through them. The first one is what we call the Explorer. So it looks like a little file, couple file documents right here. This is going to show you a list of all the files inside of whatever folder you just opened. The search is just for you to search really quickly within those files or within the file that you're looking at. The third is a source control tab that will allow you to connect and initialize Git just through VS Code. So VS Code has some really cool built-in features for using Git. And the fourth is the run and debug. So when you get to the point of testing your code, you can use VS Code to really test to implement running the test that you're calling. The last here is the extensions. And so we talked a little bit about extensions in our last session, and I'll bring it back up in a few minutes. But the extensions are really like customizable. What's the word I'm looking for? Customizable like packages we can add to our VS Code experience to really make dev environment for ourselves a little bit easier. And this last one, I never really even clicked on chat. Oh, that's a part of an extension. All right. Well, first thing I want y'all to do is go to the Explorer, right? And the Explorer, like I said, should just pull up like a list of your files. Right now, we don't have any files in here, so we're gonna create our first file. And the way we're gonna do that, we're just gonna use the shortcuts built into VS Code. One way, you could just go to File and then click New File, or you can click this little icon here at the top with the document and the plus sign. And that will create a new file directly in the folder and let you type out what the name of the folder of the file will be, excuse me. In this case, the file that we're going to create is actually going to be called index.html. And as you can see, as soon as I typed a .html, the little icon here on the left changed to look like a HTML tag. And just for the sake of showing you, we're going to create an HTML file, but I just want to show you, right? If I go to like CSS, for instance, or JavaScript, you can see that that little icon is changing. And it just goes to show VS Code is able to then, based on what files we're creating, know, hey, this is the language this file expects to be written in, and it can help us out in the form of visualizing that particular document better for us and giving us some really cool tips and stuff as we're writing. But first, we're going to create an index.html file. So I'm just going to go ahead and press enter, and we will pull up on the right-hand side a new HTML file for ourselves right here. And the HTML file itself is blank, but we're going to go ahead and sauce it up a little bit by writing some HTML for ourselves. So first things first, you got to make sure you have this HTML file. And so just give me a quick thumbs up if you have an HTML file that you're looking at in front of yourself real quick. That way I could just say, okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? All right. I see a good amount of folks. Keep going. Let it go. Yeah. All right. That's a good amount of people. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Nice. Okay. So all you got to do is create a new index.html file. And really, that's the starting point. The next thing we're going to do is actually work on creating some HTML in this particular file that we can use in order to basically start the process of defining our HTML out for ourselves. And so, like we talked about last time, HTML is structured in documents. An HTML file is going to basically specify an HTML document and the different elements that are going to be on that HTML document. So in order to first let the browser know that we're working on an HTML document, we need to create basically like a little declaration that says, hey, this is an HTML document. So the first line I want y'all to write on line 1 in your index.html file is open an angle bracket, left angle bracket, and you can see VS Code will start helping you out with some autofills. So we're going to create this little declaration for letting the browser know that what we're looking at is an HTML document. It's a left arrow bracket with exclamation mark, doc type HTML with a closing right angle bracket. So that's the first thing we got to write, right? In order to tell the browser, this is what we're going to be building here is an HTML document. Treat this like an HTML document. The next thing we're going to need to do after getting that first declaration built out is create the HTML element that will represent our whole document. So to do that, we're going to also open up a new left angle bracket, and we're going to type HTML. And that one thing I really love about VS Code is it auto closes tags for you, so that you now know, hey, I have an open HTML tag and a closing tag. And so HTML is an interesting language because of the fact that you nest elements inside of elements. And so opening tags allow for you to declare the element, and then in between an opening tag and what we call a closing tag, you can define some HTML. So I'll just type in this right now, just as an example, right? So inside of here on line 3 and in between lines 2 and 4 will be where we put more HTML elements. What we have on line 2 is an open tag for an HTML element. What we have on line 4 is a closing tag for an HTML element. And so HTML will have these opening tags and closing tags because there's elements that will contain other elements inside of it. Um, one of the two elements that are going to have to be defined in our document for it to work as we would expect it. One is the head, and the second is the body. And the head is where we'll start storing some interesting data, metadata about our application or our website. Um, the body is really where all the magic happens in terms of the things we want visually to see from our HTML document. And yeah, the what you put in your head and your body will change based on the needs of your HTML site. And as we take a look at more sites together, you'll see that, some things need to be in the head, some things need to be in the body, and each site kind of defines those things a little bit differently. For now, we're going to add two tags to just give us something to work off to make sure that things are working as we expect. Um, so I'm going to add one tag into the head, and I'm going to add one tag into the body. So I'll just start by putting a nice little enter to give myself a new line. And then on line 4 here, I'm going to create a title tag. And the title tag, if we hover over it in VS Code, you'll see that it gives you this nice little pop-up that describes what that element is doing. The title element helps you define a document's title or name. What this is going to do is show title on the tab, but also if a user bookmarks our site or any of those things, it will show up with the title of the page. So it's really important to give your pages titles just because of the fact that that's how users expect to find and identify your website in the sea of all the other tabs that they have open. So in this title, I'm going to just kind of say, I'm just going to say my cringe website, you know what I'm saying? Because it is kind of cringe that I'm making a portfolio site of myself in front of y'all. That's kind of awkward. Uh, but then in the body, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new heading. And the heading right now is just going to say, hey, it's Cam. And we'll keep it pretty simple for now. So I'll save that, and voila. If you save that and you just, you have all the stuff you see here, just raise your hand. Congratulations. You just wrote your first HTML document, and you know what I'm saying? Life's good, right? You know what I mean? Look at us. Look at us just coding casually on a Wednesday, Like, so this is what it's all about. This is what dreams are made of. It's like, wow, yeah, you did it. You did it, Samantha. You did it. You big time now. The price just went up, sis. Yep, yep. Talking about easy so far. Okay, Dad, you want me to turn up? You want me to turn it up? You want me to? Nah. Okay, we'll keep it how it is. Yeah, no, please, no. Yeah, no, we'll keep it how it is. But this is the pace. We're good. So long as you're getting up to this part, you're good. You're good. All right, fire. So I'll pause just a little bit because I want to make sure at least more folks raise their hands if they've gotten this far. And because some folks might need a little bit more time, so we'll just wait a little bit longer. See our colleagues raising their hands real quick. Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
So, Professor, I have a question.
Go ahead, fam.
Yeah, if how can we run it that? And if we run it, we are going to see the answer of that one.
So you're saying how we're gonna see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Say less, bro. You ahead of the game, bro. You jumping ahead. Don't worry, I got you. I got you. I got you.
Okay.
That's our next step. I got you.
Okay, Professor.
Nah, you good, bro. Good question. If anybody's experiencing some trouble, you can't get the HTML up or you can't, get your tags in there, definitely please drop them in the chat so me or your colleagues can help. Um, Still see a few more folks could raise their hands. You know what I'm saying? Just give your boy
Uh,
some,
Professor, I have a question
Good.
here.
Go ahead, bro.
Does indentation matter here?
That's a great
Indentation?
question. That's a great question. And no, HTML isn't like languages like Python where like the indentation matters. The document, if this was all like in one line, the document would still be able to read itself. The thing is that indentation just helps you, right? It just helps you read it a little bit better, especially because like you can see there's all this nesting happening, right? So
Okay.
personally, I like to indent because it'll give me a better look at what's happening on each of the lines and with each element. But you don't have to indent it in order to have it work correctly. Great question.
Thank you.
No, great question. Great question. All right, good people. Thank y'all. So here's what we're gonna do next. So we're gonna try to run this and to see and make sure that we can see what we're hoping to see here. So to do that, what we're gonna do is there's two ways we can do this. So the first, I'll show the first way, and then we'll go back and do it the other way. So first things first, go to your browser and open a new tab, and in the tab just click file and then open file, and you should be able, it's either open file or open, right? And you'll find a pop-up for your file explorer again. So go to wherever you saved that folder that we were just talking about. And for me, I think I saved it on my desktop, and it was, yep, personal website, index.html, and just click open, and you should see your file upload, your browser should reload with that file, and you should see the heading that you typed in there. So,
That's like, can you do that again?
yeah, no problem, sis. So on your browser, in your browser, you should have the ability to open a file in your file. So just click file at the top, and there should be a thing for open or open file or something like that. Click open file. And then what you want to do is find the index.html file in the folder we created. And so that's why I said save that folder somewhere you know where it is so that you can quickly navigate to it. For me, I saved the folder we're looking for is the one that you called personal website or personal site or whatever you called yours. Um, I saved that folder on my desktop. So I went in this file browser to my desktop to personal website folder, and then I found that index.html, and I pressed open, and that opened up this particular file.
Professor, I had a question.
Go ahead, fam.
So, do we have to save on the file, right?
You have to save it? Yeah. If you didn't save it, if
Yeah,
you
because
didn't
I was
save it
trying
on
to do
VS
it, and I'm
Code,
like, what's going on here?
yeah, if you didn't save it on VS Code, you're not gonna see anything. And so you'll know in VS Code, you'll know when a file isn't saved because like if you make a change, you'll see this little white dot on the files. So in order to save it, once you do, Control S, Command S or whatnot, you'll see that there's no white dot when the file has been saved.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
And so here's the thing, y'all. The way that we just open this is we open this in a traditional way of opening the file, right? HTML is a document, but we created what's called an HTML file, right? That HTML file, the index.html, that's the file, right? That file contains the HTML like language that basically is what's showing up here on our page. We can see what HTML we are loading here using developer tools. And all of the more modern browsers have a set of developer tools that you can use in order to take a look at all the HTML or anything on the web page that you've opened or that you navigated to. To look at the HTML from the developer tools, all you have to do is go to your page that you opened, right click or control click, and look for either view page source or inspect. I'm just going to open view page source right now. And you'll see the HTML that we just wrote is here. So we got the HTML we got the declaration, the HTML tag, the head with the title, and the body with the H1. So this is tracked to the file that we just opened. That also is showing this little header for me as well. The thing about files, right, is that the way we open this is like we opened the file directly on our machine. And you know this because if you look at the URL in your browser, wherever you open this, you're going to see a path that is a path to your file on your computer, right? So this /user/Camino desktop personal website index.html, that is a path to a folder on my machine, right? Now, this URL looks way different than the URLs that we're used to seeing, right? We're used to seeing, hey, I want to go to like camthecoolest.com and see this little dope website, right? But the difference is that in your browser, it has the capability of opening local files, which is what we're doing, or opening files that are hosted on a server somewhere, right? And so any of the other sites that we go to, right? So like if I went to like google.com, for instance, right? This is google.com is a web domain, right? And that domain is pulling HTML from Google's server. And Google server, you know, for those of y'all who are still unfamiliar with the term, you know, Google has a number of computers that are running somewhere in the world that are listening for people like us saying, hey, I want to go to google.com. And when that server hears that, hey, this person's computer, Cam's computer, wants to go to google.com, it listens for that request. And then it says, hey, here's the HTML for Google for you to take a look at, and it reloads the browser with that information. So servers play a very cool role in our process of leveraging sites online, right? Part of the job of a server is to provide the most update version of things based on the request that a user is making. And so you have an example here of the file way of opening your code with a folder or with a file directly on your machine. And as you can see, we're trying to get to the point of being able to have our code like hosted somewhere on a server so other people can navigate to it. It takes a little bit of work to get to that point where, you know, hey, I could give you a link and then you see my same HTML. But an intermediate step to doing that is opening our own code on a local, what we call a local server. And the value of doing that is that, you know, it does take a lot of work when you have open from a file to keep seeing the file update over time. So to demonstrate that point, if I come back in here and I just add a paragraph and say, hey, would love to see this too, right? So I just added a nice little paragraph tag. You don't have to do this because I'm going to delete this in a second, but just as an example, right? So I go ahead, I added this new element, I save this, and now this file is saved, and I come back, right? But we don't see it, right? The reason we don't see it is because every time something changes in these files, the server needs to reload, or we need to reload the file from locally that we opened. So that means I have to refresh. Once I refresh, I see it. That's great. Things are cool. But that little workflow in and of itself is a little bit tedious, right? And you know, you think that we have to reload all the time to see changes on some of these other sites? No, not really. Some of these servers we reload for us when they detect changes. We can actually make use of a tool that will do that for us and make our workflow a little bit easier, which is called the live server in VS Code. So we're going to just reopen that file with the live server, and then we'll push forward that way, because the live server is just really helpful, especially when you're working on just regular HTML sites that don't already have a server connected to them. So to work with the live server, here's what you got to do. The first thing you need to do is navigate to the extensions tab in VS Code. So it's this one that looks like a little set of building blocks. I think if you go to there should be another way to get there, but you know what I'm saying, I'm not seeing. Oh, if you go to view, yeah, if you go to view and then extensions, you can get there as well. But you want to click this little building block looking thing, and then you'll get this nice little panel that opens out, and in that you want to type live server. And live server will come back with a number of different results. But the one that a lot of people use, the one that I got introduced to, you know what I'm saying, was this one by Ritwick Day. It's one of the more popular ones. You want to just click install if you haven't installed it already. If you have installed it, you're ahead of the curve. But this particular server will open it will create a extension in the VS Code that now you can use whenever you want to open your files or files within your folder on a live server. So once you install the live server, you'll see a little button on the bottom of your VS Code screen called Go Live. You can click that, or you can right click on a file inside of your folder and say open with live server. And what that's going to do is it's going to start up a live development server at your development IP address, which is going to be 127.0.0.1, which is also known as your local host. And that local development server is going to host your file as if this was on a regular server. In fact, this is exactly what it would look like if we had built a real server and put it up. The only difference between this and what we're seeing with Google is that they mapped the IP address to a domain name, right? And so the last step to get to the point of having your own site online like this is to have a domain name that you connect to an IP address. You wouldn't want to connect it to your you wouldn't want to connect it to your localhost IP address, but you would have you would get a IP address for a machine, and you can connect that to a domain name, and boom, then you have your nice little cringy website hosted for the world to see. But we'll get to the point where we can host our sites too. But we're just doing this right now to learn a little bit more about HTML. So to get back there, right, just give me a nice thumbs up if you have at least one version of your site opened up, whether it's through the live server or through the file. So that way I know that we all can see our sites as we're working on there. So if you can see your own page, just give me a nice little thumbs up or something to say, hey, I can see
Can you explain that again, how to put the our page on the browser, please?
So if you have your page, there's two ways to do it. One way is to go to File, Open File, and then open your file, open your index.html file that you were just working on. That's by far the easiest way. But in order to, if you do it that way, you just got to continue to refresh it so that you can see whatever your latest changes are. If you don't want to do it that way, the only other way that we're going to work on right now is using the live server. So to use the live server, you have to open up the extensions, install live server from on VS Code. And then once the live server is finished installing, you can go back to all your files, right? And right click on the file for your HTML and click open with live server. Or you should see a little button at the bottom of your VS Code screen that says go live. And that button, once you click that, should open up your website to something like this.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, good people. I think I saw a good amount of y'all. Can y'all actually raise your hands? It'll be easier for me to count that way. If you got a view of your site, you can see it. You're ready to rock. You're like, come on, bring on the more cringy part. Copy. All right, 28 of y'all. Nice. You know what I'm saying? We could get a little up there more. Okay, there we go. You know what I'm saying? I'll take 30. I'll take 30 of y'all. I'll take 31. I'll take 32. Okay. I'll take 32, y'all. That's what's up. All right, lit. Yeah, that's way more than half. Let's keep it rocking then. Whoa, I clicked the whole time wrong button. That's on me. My bad. My bad. All right, cool. So now that we have now that we are at the point where we can see our site, we have a live server or a way of opening our file in the browser, we're actually really good to go. And now really all it's about is like continuing to learn some more HTML to help us in our journey of making this site even better. And so we kind of took a look at this a little bit last time, but we'll go through it together. I want to just add a little bit more here. So technically, I already kind of have a little bit of the stuff here. So I want this nice little heading. I want a nice image, and then I want these links. So let's get to the point where we have all of those things in there as well. So I'm thinking now, like, I want to make this site about something that I care about, right? And rather than make it so cringe, like it's about me all the time, like maybe I'll make this about like, you could choose whatever it is you want. It could be about a favorite artist. It could be music. It could be athlete you like my man Didier Drogba. Shout out to Drogba. You know what I'm saying? It could be whatever it is that you want. So feel free to customize this to be whatever you like. I'll keep it going in this theme just to make life easy for me. But yeah, feel free to swap the theme of this site based on whatever it is that you'd like it to focus on for now. Either way, let's add some more HTML elements so we can continue to talk about HTML in a practical way. So I'm going to go back to VS Code, And I'm going to get rid of this paragraph because that's not really the theme of what I want. I just want this heading. One thing about headings, right, is that there's different sizes of headings. So I'm just going to kind of drag this over a little bit. Whoops. So I can show you while doing this. So there's a couple of different heading sizes. So, right, H1 is going to be the largest. I'm going to just do this, second largest. And let me just do this to make my life easy. So with headings, there's a couple of different types of headings. As you can see, oh, I should have changed. I should have changed the text itself, but they're not all the second largest. But as you can see, it kind of goes down in size, right? So the point is, with headings, right, you can create a heading based on whatever size you want. I'm pretty sure there's up to 6 different heading sizes. But as you can see, the value of the headings are just being able to kind of create big text at that then each one follows kind of like, hey, I'm a little bit smaller than the next. So headings are cool, just so you know. Of course, you don't necessarily need headings because one thing that folks don't realize early on is that another valid form of HTML is text. So I could say, hey, this is just some text, right? And as you can see, that text just kind of shows up as an element, right? Text is treated like HTML. You could think of it like text is valid HTML. So you don't always need your text to be kind of defined within an HTML tag, but or like within a heading or within a paragraph. But there's good reasons to do it like that, where you do keep it kind of contained in some tags, because it will allow you to better customize the styling and things of that nature later. So just want you to know text is valid HTML, and you can use text in a number of different ways. Headings, paragraphs, regular text, all of those things count as valid HTML. Just kind of thinking off top and trying to think about other things I can just preemptively put in here to show y'all. But yeah, we'll get there as we get there. So the next thing I want to add though is the image. And the image actually is going to allow us to talk about something cool with relationship to how HTML tags work, right? So if you remember, what I was talking about before was that HTML is nested. There's like a lot of tags that nest data into itself. And any tag that needs data inside of itself will nest it. Like before I write this image tag, any tag that has data inside of it will nest it. So right now, this data, right, this hey it's Cam is text. Remember, I just told you that text is valid HTML. So this is actually just text as data, and the H1 is just kind of is nesting it. It's just like, hey, I'm open, I contain this, and then I close, right? So a lot of HTML tags have that structure of like, I open myself, some data gets created, and then I close. There are tags though that actually don't have an opening, like, kind of a formal open and closing. They just kind of close themselves, and we call those self-closing elements. An image element is a good example of this, because an image tag actually doesn't have like, you don't see an image and then like slash image or something like that, right? You actually see image like this, and then the same line that the image is first created, like the first angle bracket, right? It closes itself. So this is an example of what we call a self-closing tag. That means that the image doesn't have nested data, but as you can tell, right? Well, the image needs some data to show itself, right? How are we going to actually show an image without any data? Well, images and many other HTML elements take data as like essentially, like you could think of it like parameters. Like we pass parameters into the image for it to show, and those parameters are called attributes. HTML has a number of different attributes allow for us to provide extra information about different elements to that element itself. So each HTML element has specific attributes that it can receive. That's something to just that, you're not, I can't give you like all the attributes because every element has different attributes that it can receive. And if you're curious about it and you're like, well, I want to just know what attributes a certain element can take, right? That's when you're going to have to look up certain things about the documentation of those elements. And one of the convenient ways to do it is by way of using the Mozilla developer references that VS Code kind of automatically bakes into the tooltips when you hover over it. So like the Mozilla developer documentation is a great resource in addition to things like the W3 schools that will just give you some cool understanding of how these elements work and some examples. So here you can see for the image element, you can see that if we scroll down to the attributes, it will show us all of the different attributes that we can use for an image, right? So these are all of the different ones, right? There's a lot of different attributes that you can use. Some you'll use sooner rather than later. Others you might not use unless you're doing very specific things, but it's just good to know that with any element that you're looking at, you can look up its attributes here. But let's take a look at how an image's attributes actually get defined, right? So an image, right, needs to receive some data that tells it, here's the actual image I want you to show. That data is passed to an image with an attribute called source, written out like SRC. The source attribute gives the image the data it needs to then show an image on the page. So the source attribute provides that additional information about like, here's the image that I actually want to show, right? So with the image source, this will then give this image tag the data it needs to show something. So all I got to do here is pass in the source attribute. You can also highlight over in VS Code, you can also highlight over attributes and it'll break down a little bit more about that attribute. So it says the image URL. This attribute is mandatory for the image element, right? So if you don't have this element, it will not show anything. Source is treated like an image with pixel density, blah, 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 blah. And then there's some other ways that you can define the source with other attributes like a source set attribute, etc. But you can see here, it says this is a URL, right? And a URL can be either, like we talked about with this document, it could either be a link to somewhere that exists online on a server somewhere, or it could be just like a path in our files that we want to show. So for now, let's go the route of doing links because it'll just make our life a little bit easier. So what you can do is go ahead and find a URL to an image that you like and add it here as a source. Sometimes just to mix it up, I like to go to like Giphy or something and add like a GIF or something and make it cool, you know what I mean? Like, so let's do like this nice little video, this nice little GIF of this little drawing right here. All I got to do here, I'm gonna right click and open the image in another tab just so I can actually get the right link. Because y'all know sometimes with certain things, the link doesn't show the right way. And I'll go back and I'm gonna paste that in and let's see if that works. It should, and boom, there's my nice little GIF. So I got that in there. So yeah, go ahead and add an image of your own inside of your code. It could be a GIF like I just did. If you want, you could go to Google Images, or you can find an image on your computer and pass the URL to that image yourself. Go ahead, Donovan, if you have a question, you can speak, bro. Or if you're just saying you got it.
Yeah, so like that could be like from like Facebook or anything like that.
Yeah, the image can be from wherever. So long, and this is the thing about URLs. So long as you can get a URL directly to the data, you can use it. So yeah, that image could be on Facebook, it could be on Instagram, it could be wherever you have a desire to grab an image from. But yeah, good people. Once you got an image in your site, just raise your hand so I know that y'all rocking with me, and we'll keep it pushing.
Professor, I put the image here, but I don't know why it's just the image. I don't know if it's not uploading or what.
So you want to make sure that whatever image you want to make sure whatever link you're copying is actually going to go to an image. So make sure that you copy that link. And one thing I'd like to do is open it in another tab, and you should see the image. If you don't see the image like this, like just kind of like sitting on top of a background,
Okay.
it's a good sign that you might have copied the wrong URL. So just go
Okay,
back and
okay.
find a
Okay.
better URL for it. Yep. It's kind of fun, right? I'm not the only one, like kind of low key having fun, right? Making this cringe little website, right? Y'all are like, wow, web dev, wow, websites. This ain't Java. Yeah, make a nice fan page. Yeah, make a nice little you know, if I have more time, I'll probably make like a anime fan page for some of my favorite anime right now or something, you know. But hey, we could do that over time. So keep going. Raise your hand when you got it going, and once I see a good amount of folks, we'll go on to the last little step for at least getting this front page looking like the last one. Just giving a couple more seconds for folks. I'm gonna drink some water. Oh, I don't even got no water in here. Dang, dang. The betrayal of my water bottle. Dang, that's crazy. All right, we'll get it soon enough. All right, we're at 30, 30, 31, 30 folks. So we'll keep it pushing. So here's where we're gonna go. So next, let's add our links, and then let's talk about what we see, and clearly we'll make some changes here. I'm gonna go ahead just to make these a little bit more consistent. Like, what is this site? Because I just feel like that matches this GIF more than my name being up there. So all right, cool. So next thing I want to do now that I did that little crazy random change, I want to actually make some links, right? To make it maybe I get like nice little like about this site or like learn more or something, right? So let's make a nice little like link, right? And a link is typically just something that sits there and we can click and it should go somewhere else, right? And links in HTML are very interesting because we're going to use them often. They're not like they're a very common element to use because they allow for us to do so much with relationship to navigating someone from one thing to the next. So what we're going to do is inside, going back to our HTML, I am going to add a new element. And so the new element we're going to work with is an anchor. And anchors are an interesting element because just like images, they require attributes, but they are nested elements. So like the elements we've been talking about before, right? There's a closing tag for an anchor. And what we do with an anchor is you can use an anchor to make anything a link, right? Like we could wrap an image with an anchor tag and then, something like this. and turn an image into a link, right? Something like this would then allow for us to turn an image into a link. But anchors essentially turn anything that we put as like the body into a clickable thing. So here I'm going to just say, I'm just going to type learn more, right? And if I save this, you'll see we have a nice little, we have this nice little text pop in here, but it actually isn't clickable. There's nothing clickable about this. And something too, I don't really like how it's showing up, but we'll talk about that in a second. So what I want to do next is I actually want to make this link go somewhere and do something. And so for now, right, I want this link to be able to share some information about something generally. And I guess to make it clear, like, and then we'll go back and I can edit this as much as I want. Let's do this. I'll turn this back to like about me, and let's say like, who is Cam? Cam Flowers. I'll put my whole government on there for y'all. And I'll keep this anchor to say learn more. But instead of having this not point to anything, what I want this to do is link maybe people to my GitHub or something, right? So I'll just say learn more on GitHub. And to turn this into an actual working link, the only thing I need to do is add an attribute to the anchor that will allow for me to define where will this point to? Where will this link send somebody to? To do that, we're going to use a new attribute called an href. And an href is what basically allows for us to define the URL for where this link is going to take someone. For us, for me, I guess this link is going to go to my GitHub. So I'm just going to say https github.com/community, right? And so now if I save this, you can see that this now turns into an actually functional link, right? And I can click this link and it's going to take you directly to my GitHub page, right? And that's cool, right? Because hey, someone could come to this particular site I'm building and go to this link. And that link will take them to this working HTML page. But again, there's multiple ways for us to connect dots with HTML, and the anchor will link out not only to a external URL like we're doing now, right? I'm linking here, I'm linking out to an external URL, but I can also create an anchor that links to an individual file, like another file, right? So in this case, let's say I want to link somebody to another page, another HTML page that I'm building. I could do that very simply by, again, creating an anchor with an href. And then here I could say about this site, right? And the only thing that's different here is now I need some way to just say, hey, I want to go to a new HTML page, right? So it would be great if I could say something like, about, about or something. And it goes to my about page. Well, it turns out that we can actually really do this very simply using HTML, right? HTML actually makes this very simple. So here's what we're going to do. First thing is I'm going to open up that Explorer tab again that we have in VS Code. And I'm going to click a new file. And that new file, I'm just going to call it about.html. And so now I have two files. I have the index.html that we started, and then I have the about.html that I have here now as well. So in the about.html file, I want to just make sure, like we talked about before, I set this up as an HTML document. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put the basics that we literally talked about at the beginning, same stuff, doc type HTML, HTML document, element, the head, right, and the body, because those things are what makes up a solid HTML document. In this case, I'm gonna again put a title, and I'm gonna have that title say about this cringe site, and the body, I'm gonna put a H1 in here. That is just like, or maybe I'll put a paragraph to be a little bit more descriptive, and I'll say this is a site that is not suitable for really anybody. it's kind of awkward. Really got anybody except the folks.
Professor, why are we creating this about HTML file? Is to link those files together or?
My boy said, "Bro, get to the point." God dang! Like, I mean, I do not even want your suspense. He's like, just get to the point. Yeah, bro. No, that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna link these HTML files together, bro. Everybody said, "Hey, man, you wasted my time. Just press save, right?" So here's what y'all do: create an HTML file like this. Um, you can really put anything you want in the body, but put something that you can then see. So I put a paragraph, but you might want to put an H1, whatever you want. But then what we really want to do is create a link between that HTML file and this one that we have as our regular index page. So to do that, instead of the href just saying about, we need the href to have the path to the file that we created, right? So the file that we created is about.html. So I'm just going to type about.html in here. And that now will create for us a link that goes to this other HTML page, right? And that allows us now to have a multi-page HTML experience because now we have one page. This link right here takes us to a second page, right? And even though this is going to an external link, right, this link still takes us to a third HTML page. It's just that this HTML page is not one I built. It's built by GitHub, right? Because all of this is really HTML, right? I could right click on this and I can show you by viewing the source, right? This is the HTML for GitHub's site that is showing all that interesting, cool stuff. And it's, as you can see, you know, it's actually been interesting because I haven't shown y'all like a regular site's HTML. But if you look at this, right, you see that doc type HTML, you see the HTML element and see a bunch of stuff going on in there. But there's a head, and the head has a bunch of little things going on. And if we scroll down far enough, I'm sure we will find the body, right? And the body is a lot more stuff for GitHub's site, right? So again, all sites have the same structure. I won't even scroll because it looks like it's a lot of code, but all sites have that same structure: the doc type HTML, the HTML element, the head, and the body. So on our site right now, we have a nice heading, image, and 2 links. And of course, like there's you know, it's not giving what it needs to give. There's like stylistic things that I'd love to do to actually make this site a little bit better. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure that we all get to the same point. So what I want y'all to do is make sure you create a new file, a new HTML file. Remember, all you really need is the doc type comment, the HTML, something in the head, something in the body, and that should be good. And in your index.html, which is your original page, you can create a link directly to that additional HTML file that you just created. So once you've connected your 2 HTML files, just raise your hand so I know that you're good. And once enough of us are at that point, we'll continue to get it rocking. My boy really stopped me in the middle of my whole nice little spiel, right? He was like, bro, like, can you tell me what we're doing this for? I am sorry, bro. I am sorry. Live coding's not for the faint of heart, too. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, dang. I be talking like that to people on YouTube, though, but it's never on live. It's funny to me. That was funny. Nice job, y'all. Cool. Yeah, if you got your 2 pages to connect, what you really just did, congratulations, you created a multi-page HTML site. So if this is your first time building HTML, you're cracking right along, because realistically, all it is from here is just continuing to add more elements so that our pages actually look and do what we want them to do. So we'll keep talking about that in a couple seconds, but I'm just going to pause and wait a little bit so for everybody has an opportunity to connect these 2 things. think there's a way I can open both of these. Yeah, here you go. So this one is the so my about page is not really doing anything crazy, just kind of body and a paragraph, and then this is the regular index page in terms of the elements. Awesome. Again, if you're having any trouble, drop them in the chat. Appreciate that. And yeah, we'll keep it rocking. So yeah, I'll give it like 60 more seconds because it looks like a couple more folks could raise their hands and let us know we there. And they might still be kind of chugging along with the code. Okay, thank you all so much. Dope, awesome, thank you, thank you. Okay, cool. So here's the thing. Trying to close this. So now that we have this, HTML up, right? We have not only one page, this index page, we also have a second page, this about page, and really, we're creating a solid structure for this web page to do a lot more, right? If I wanted to have a whole another set of pages, I could do that very easily, right? This is just a great start, right? And so, if for instance I turn this cringe website into a blog site, right? All of these links could be links to other blog pages in the HTML, and each HTML page is where I could write the blog, right? And design it and all of that. So just so y'all know, this is very simple to then turn into actually something that you'd like to use for yourself and continue to practice. One thing I want to just highlight at this point is that there's a number of different elements that you can start leveraging in order to keep building out these sites to have whatever it is you'd like on them, right? So, you might want to add some audio or add some video, right? You can add buttons instead of the anchors, instead of the links, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of different things that you can continue to add to your sites. And it really all starts with just what we're doing now, which is playing around, adding things, looking up other sites and seeing some elements that you like and adding those elements. But realistically, HTML is one of those things. It's going to take you some time to learn the types of elements that allow for you to do the really show your sites the way that you would expect to show them. So we're talking about some of the more common elements. A couple other ones that are just good to know, like let's say you want to have like a contact form or something in your HTML code. You can use the form element, which is a great element for creating little forms, right? So the form element will help you create something like this, right? So if you wanted a nice little contact situation or something like that, you could do that. Another element that's pretty common and important to know, at least, tables, right? The table element, the table element also has, gives you the ability to then create HTML tables and show some data in a table-like format. One more that is also very commonly used, especially in just sites like even the one we're just building, are lists. So there's a couple of different ways we could create lists in HTML. You could see like an unordered list, which would be a nice little, kind of bullet pointed list like this. Here's some of that HTML right here. But also there's like ordered lists. So like if you wanted like a 1, 2, 3 kind of dig, ordered lists are kind of similar too. So you could do list items that are numbered. So a lot of different cool elements. You know, it'll just take us some time to keep using them and practicing new elements and yeah, learning all of the elements that we can to just make our sites do what we hope them to do. But let's say we're at this point where we're like, okay, cool. I have some elements that I like to use, but you know, on top of learning more elements, I want to actually like get this site to look a lot more standardized, right? Especially because now that I'm introducing new pages, I really would love that each page kind of feels similar. Um, and to do that is no longer a question about this elements, right? The elements are still going to be the ones that they are, but now it's a question about styling and it's about placement of those elements. And that's where HTML stops and CSS begins, right? CSS stands for cascading style sheets. And we use CSS in order to take HTML elements and style them and position them a certain way on an HTML page. To give you an example of that, I really love this breakdown of CSS that the W3 Schools has. There's a really cool, I think in the introduction, they show us this really cool breakdown of CSS. But first, let's talk about it. CSS stands for cascading style sheets, describes how those elements are displayed on the screen, like I was just telling you. It saves a lot of work because you can lay out multiple pages all at once, right? So if you have multiple HTML pages, instead of having to style them all separately, you can write one CSS file and connect all your pages to that one file, and then the style kind of is transferred over those different files. But what does CSS do, right? And it's great to see it, I think, in practical terms. And I really love this W3 Schools example that they have on this website. So they created this little really cool little interface that shows, it says, hey, this is one HTML page. So the same HTML elements displayed with 4 different style sheets. So we can click on these different style sheets to see those HTML elements. As a matter of fact, we can go to no HTML elements or no CSS elements, right? No style sheets. And this kind of looks similar to kind of what we have right now, right? Looks like a heading. This looks like it could just be a paragraph or regular text. Whoops, they're showing us the unordered list, right? They're showing us the little list of items here. And again, header, paragraph, couple anchors, now that we know those, right? Paragraph, etc. So nothing crazy in terms of the HTML elements. These are all actually elements that y'all know. But it's saying, hey, use the menu to select different style sheets. So if I go to style sheet 1, right, this is that exact same HTML, but presented in this way with this nice little font and like, you know, kind of this layout of like the menu here on the left. All of the text is shifted to the right. It's very interesting, right? Style sheet 2, same HTML, but the style is completely different, as you can see, right? Here we have like a nice red background, but the formatting of this whole body of text is way different than it was on this one, where it was all pushed to the right. Now it's like more pushed to the left and interesting, right? So all these style sheets are doing is defining where the elements are going to be and how those elements are going to be how those elements are going to look, but it doesn't change the elements that are used. Here's style sheet 3, right? Again, completely different style than the last 2. The menu is different, like, but the you know, the titles for the headings are different. A lot of interesting things there. Style sheet 4, right? Also very interesting, like completely different in terms of the styling, background colors change, the menu is different. The highlight, when you're highlighting over or hovering over these things is different, what it's showing. Very interesting style here. And then again, no style sheet. So just the HTML itself. So they started with just this HTML, but the styling allows for us to achieve these different, really interesting looks. I'm curious for y'all, based on these ones that you see, which style sheet do you like the most? 1, 2, 3, or 4, or no style sheet? Which one do you like the most? Drop it in the chat. 1, here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3, 4, and then no style sheet. Which one do you like the most? But yeah, the styling is all subjective, and as you can see, even in the if you can see even in the chat, right? All of us kind of have different preferences for the ones we like. A lot of folks actually like 4, which is cool, right? This one, little matrix looking John, and then number 2. Right? The styling is going to be subjective though, right? Everyone has their own desire for what styling looks like, but the cool thing to know is that you don't have to change up how you do your HTML. You can change your styling as many times in as many ways as you want. So the what CSS allows us to do is it allows us to define a specific syntax for finding specific HTML elements that we will give styling properties to. So we use CSS to find or select elements and then apply different styling rules to those elements. So here's an example of CSS syntax looks like. So on the left, we have what's called a selector. That selector is what is targeting a group of elements. So in this case, this selector is a simple selector that's just targeting H1 elements. And the rule is saying, hey, for all the H1 elements in the document that I find, I want the color of those H1s to be blue, and I want the font size of those H1s to be 12 pixels. We use the selector, like it says here, to point to the HTML element we want to style, and we create the rule of CSS that contains property and values of styling that we want to apply. CSS does separate those rules with colons. With semicolons, excuse me. But we can property values are like key value pairs, and they use colons in between to define them. So here's another example of CSS, right? A paragraph. So this is the selector. Everything before the curly brace is the selector. So this is selecting paragraph elements and giving them a red color and aligning the text in the center. There's different types of CSS selectors, right? There's simple selectors that can find elements based on their name and then certain attributes like ID or class. There's combinator selectors, pseudo class selectors. There's a number of different types of selectors. Over time, as we work on more elements and more robust HTML, you'll see different uses of different CSS. But the real most important ones are the element selectors and then class and ID, which get at a very interesting point. And we'll actually take a look at this in a second, which is the ID and class selectors are using what is a series of specific attributes that are very helpful to use when we're building out our web pages. The ID attribute is the ID attribute basically refers to where do they have it? Dang, they don't got it in here. That is crazy. Sugar cookie man, this is crazy. The ID and class attributes are attributes that we define on our elements to give them to be able to select them in a unique way. An ID attribute is an attribute that basically you can apply an ID attribute to a specific element and give that one element per document an ID that can be searched. Class elements class attributes allow for us to define multiple elements with a same kind of unique identifier that we can then group those elements by. We'll take a look at that in next week when we kind of do a little bit more robust HTML. But for now, let's just talk about how we connect CSS into this little website so that at least for y'all have the ability to say, oh, okay, not only did I learn how to make an HTML page, I learned how to connect to HTML pages, multiple pages. And now the last thing we want to do is actually connect these multiple HTML pages to some CSS. So let's go back to VS Code and just take a look at our site real quick. And some of what I want to do is I'd love to just make sure that I get these anchors on their own line. That's like one big thing I'd like to do. And I'd love to style them so that they're a little bit bigger. The text is a little bit bigger. It's easier to see. I'd love to format this so that this image is in the middle. And like everything is just like center justified like this one. Like, simple as this page is, it's still very clean, So I want to do something similar. And let's use some styling to do that. All right. So to do this, what I'm going to need is to go back to the Explorer, and I need to create a new file that will be my CSS styles sheet. So I'm going to go ahead, create a new file, and I'm going to call it style.css. And as you can see, .css is giving us a whole different icon here. So this CSS file is going to be this CSS file is now going to allow us to justify a couple different CSS parameters for ourselves. Now, let's start with something very simple, just so that we can just confirm and show that the CSS is working. So what I'll do is I will, let's just do something like, let's change the, let's figure out if we can center or change the color of this heading. That's like a super simple enough thing. We actually saw some of that CSS if you go back to the W3 schools, I think in the CSS tutorial, they just showed us that really quickly in the intro. I think was a nice little example of, yeah. So here's a nice example of how we could write some CSS to change the heading to be blue. So we'll do something like this just to kind of get the ball rolling. So in the style.css is very simple. First, I want to define the elements that I want to change in my documents. So in this document, I have an H1 element. So I want my CSS to find this H1 element. So to do that, I can say, hey, for any H1 element inside of the document, I want the color of that element to be blue. And this all in of itself is CSS, right? One thing to know is that CSS on VS Code is actually really helpful too. If you hover over the selector, it will show you, hey, the selector you wrote, these are the elements in your HTML document that will receive this destyling. And then if you hover over the property, it'll explain what that property is doing. So color as a property in CSS will set the color of an element's text. And then clearly, one thing that's cool about the VS Code is you can also target colors if you want to kind of find a specific color outside of the named colors. But VS Code will also autocomplete and show you examples of like what you can type in here. So I always find that really helpful based on just some knowledge of what it does. But again, we got to end each rule with a semicolon. And that will help us. So I'm going to save this and go back to my site, and okay, nothing's blue, right? Well, what's going on? Well, what we need to do in order to have our HTML and our CSS connect with each other is we got to connect them. So having the CSS is just one step, but the most important thing is we need our HTML files to know that we're giving it some styling. And to do that, we have to make use of one new HTML element we haven't talked about yet, which is a link. And not a link like a link to somewhere on the online, more like a link element, which is an element that we use to link two files together and give them a relationship. So in this case, what I'm going to do is create a link and give this link a relationship to this HTML document of style sheet. This link and relationship is going to point to a specific file of type text -css. So these are just kind of some attributes that this link takes to know that it's connecting to a CSS style sheet. So first we give it that relationship as a style sheet. Next we define a type and say, hey, the type of that file is going to be text, but it's a CSS file. And the last thing we need is to point to the actual file that we're going to make a reference to. And links, just like images, are self-closing. So I'm going to self-close it like this. But now I got to point to that style sheet. So I'm going to say here, just style.css. And when I do this, right, now inside of my head, I put this link inside of my head because this isn't necessarily a element that's showing anything. It's an element that's connecting our index page to some data. And so this link now will allow for us to connect to our CSS style sheet and give us really the ability to start applying some styles. So I don't really want my heading to be blue per se, but that's a great start. And I'm just gonna add, last thing I'll do right now before we wrap is just add a couple styles to just get my stuff the way I want it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to center some of my elements. So there's a lot of different ways. One thing that's really cool about CSS is that there's a lot of different ways to style things based on how you want to style them. So in my case, I want to actually style this in a way that'll be a little bit helpful for y'all to see some new things as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change, I'm going to add one other element and into the mix here. And so this element is what we call a div. And a div is essentially a container that you can use to hold other elements. So I'm just going to like use the div a little bit to hold some elements like my, I'm just going to use the div to be like a little wrapping container over my elements here. Later, I can show y'all a little bit more ways that we use divs, but for now, just because we're wrapping up, I just want to do something quick. So with this div, I'm going to actually target that div in my styles and say, hey, take that div, that container element that I just created, and let's give it a text align of center to center the text. So we'll look here and it looks like that centered the nice text here, but I still want to center this image and center some of this other stuff as well. So to do that, I'm going to go and inside of this inside of the HTML, right? There's a couple different ways that I can do this as well, right? But the goal is, hey, you know, I want to have my image really kind of display itself in a better way. So sorry, y'all, just trying to the way that I could do that is I can add some more elements into the div. So I could just do some stuff like justify content. Let's just justify the content and center. See if that helps a little bit. Nope. And then align the items. No. All right. Well, I don't want to waste y'all's time with all the styling stuff because it's going to take a quick second. But the point is we can start using the styling to allow for us to start the process of making our site a little bit more, make our site as styled out as we want, right? And what I want to do more than anything is make sure that I have the elements that I need. And then from there, it's easier for me to then add styles to achieve what I want out of the site. I'm kind of doing this wrapping up because I just don't want to go too far over time. But of course, you know, things like I can add blocks to these different things, my image and my anchor tags to give them space as a super simple thing, just to give my to get these things on their own line, right? I can add a break element here to just say, hey, you know, like, let me just make it so that at least I have these anchors on another line, right? So things are a little bit more better now, but of course, styling takes a little bit of time and a little bit of design knowledge of what it is you want to achieve. Just that little break added a lot, right? So our image is still centered, but our anchors are now on their own line, which is helpful, right? So long story short, fam, HTML is cool because we can add these different dimensions to our sites. With the CSS, we can actually connect both our style sheet to the index page that we created, but also to this about page very simply by just copying the style sheet over. So any styles that we add to our home page, we can apply it to the same page, and that allows us to have some continuity. We learned about making multi-page HTML sites, connecting the dots between these two sites. We learned about a couple different elements, and there's way more that we can continue to learn about. We also learned just recently about how to connect it to a style sheet and have that site also hold element information. We also, last thing, was learned about how to show these sites up on a local server so we can keep testing them, and how to use the developer tools to kind of inspect some of those elements and view the source of those elements too. So thank y'all for watching me build this cringy website. I appreciate y'all for your time. More to come. Please take a look at the Slack because I'll send some info there for y'all to just keep in mind for our next couple of days, since we're not going to link for a couple of days. But if you enjoyed the lesson, give me a thumbs up, give me some love. Sorry I went a little bit over. Just trying to make sure I give you the knowledge.
Professor, just a quick question. There's no assignment for next week, right? Or